the Adventurer, a new horror game classic in its own right. I personally enjoy this game for a handful of reasons, but that's for later. Anyways, hi, you can call me C, and today I will be discussing the 2022
to 2023 to 2025.
indie horror game series titled Amanda the Adventurer. The reason I say 2022-2023 is because this game released a handful of demos before its official release on April 25th, 2023, a few days after my birthday actually. Since this series recently concluded on November 6th, 2025, and based off of the poll I did, I thought now would be a fun time to discuss the game. So sit back, put this on in the background, or watch the visuals as I will be doing a drawing inspired by the first game, and enjoy. The story of this game has been theorized since its demo releases, but now we have basically all the answers we've needed since the beginning. So, how this will go is I will explain the story as presented by the games before I give my own opinions or theories on what I think certain things mean. Our in-game story starts off as we play as Riley Park, niece of Kate Park. The player, aka Riley, has just inherited a house from Kate, and included in this house is a box of tapes. Reading a letter from Aunt Kate, we hear about these tapes of a cartoon called Amanda the Adventurer, and warning us that once we start watching, you can't turn back. We put in our first tape, kickstarting a series of events that send Riley down a rabbit hole. Within these tapes, the player has to input responses, or click certain things to cause certain reactions for the puzzles in the game, but for secret tapes, inputting specific words or completing a puzzle in a different order will cause a brightly colored tape to appear. In these tapes, we discover more about what is truly happening behind the scenes, alongside things we experience in-game. Now, with some of these tapes appearing out of order, I will do my best to explain the tapes in a chronological order. This began with Sam Colton, local TV producer and director in Kensdale, Ohio, and his adoptive daughter, Rebecca. Sam wanted to make a show for children to learn fundamental life lessons, so he created the live-action show of Amanda the Adventurer with Rebecca as Amanda. Even though it had a low budget, it had heart, and from the reactions of families around the city, they were loving it. One day, as Sam was reading to kids at the Kensdale Public Library, he was given an offer by someone from Hamlin Entertainment. Hamlin created tons television shows that weren't just centered in Kensdale, but nationwide. This was Sam and Rebecca's big break. Now, Amanda the Adventurer could be shown to a much bigger audience. Little did they know they were signing away everything, and they would never be the same. It started of all good and well, just transferring the live-action format into animation. But after a while, Hamlin thought that the show needed more soul put into it, so they started with Rebecca just reading some simple words, supposedly training the audio system. But if that was true, then why did the words put together sound like names of demons? That's just a coincidence. They wouldn't make a little kid do that. At least, that's what Sam was told to believe. When they kept pulling Rebecca aside and even made her sign a contract without Sam being there, he started to get suspicious and wanted to stop working with Hamlin immediately. Unfortunately, though, it was too late to back out, and that contract Rebecca signed sealed her fate. They started experimenting on Rebecca, hooking her body up to different monitors and wiring her brain into the program. All was done to put Rebecca into the show literally instead of figuratively. You see, Hamlin was no regular production company. And if you know any folklore stories, the name Hamlin should ring a couple bells for you. Hamlin is the town in which the Pied Piper occurs, a story of a man luring away rats infesting a town, and when the citizens don't show gratitude, he lures away all of the children, never to be seen again. And how this is relevant to the story. Hamlin Entertainment was a cult using the guise of a production company to get access to children. This cult believed that children were the answer to all, because their minds are so pure, so untainted from the influences of the world, that they had the true power. And Rebecca? Rebecca was a special girl. She was showing psychic powers at the mere age of 7. She was perfect for what they had planned. All they needed to do was get Sam complicit so he would convince Rebecca to not rebel against the scientists. On April 8, 2003, after being forced to film a video for Rebecca, Sam made a desperate attempt to save his daughter. Unfortunately, his efforts would be in vain. Remember when I said Rebecca had psychic powers? Well, during a power surge paired with the experimentation done on her, Rebecca accidentally, summoned something. This wasn't the same as a demon per se, more as a piece of her soul separate, just given a monstrous appearance. Now, why this was bad for Sam is that the day he went to go save Rebecca is the day this entity was created. And since Hamlin had been feeding Rebecca lies and misconstrued Sam's words, she saw him as a traitor, that he knew what was happening and even was encouraging her torture. And so the entity killed Sam when he opened the door. All of this being caught on camera. You would think after all of this, Hamlin would at least slightly reconsider their choices. But no, in fact, this encouraged them to keep up the experiments. They just needed more children to carry out their plan. And what would our lovely adventurer Amanda do without a companion? Marcus Meltman, your everyday employee? Who would suspect anything malicious from him? You could walk past him down the street and would never suspect he was the one torturing Rebecca inside the show as she was being tortured outside the show. But Marcus, oh Marcus, would be turned into Amanda's loyal companion, an adorable sheep by the name of Wooly in-game. Wooly is initially portrayed as a victim, someone Amanda is keeping in the tapes to torture him. He even encourages us, a.k.a. Riley, to destroy the tapes and get rid of the monster, but you can't trust a word from a Hamlin employee. I think we all have figured that out by now. Anyways, in the first game, we're meant to feel bad for Wooly, especially when you see him being hurt deliberately by Amanda. But in the second game, we start to see cracks in Wooly's facade. Even though he has minimal screen time, when he is on screen, he looks desperate to keep Amanda in line. A biggest example of this being in the tape called When You Feel Bad. Amanda isn't feeling the best, so Wooly tries to cheer her up. The player must open books that correspond with the events of the story, but if you follow Wooly's instructions, Amanda's entity will kill you. So instead, follow the story created based off of Amanda's drawings on the back wall. Now, this has more symbolism than just which story will progress you in the game. When Wooly, aka Marcus, tells a story, this is the story they are trying to portray to Amanda, aka Rebecca, about what happened between her and her father Sam. But that's not how Rebecca saw things. She's an adoptive child. She thought she was abandoned. So when you follow her version of the fantasy story, we see a much more human side of her. See how she actually saw the scenario? Now, in the third game, all his pretenses of being good or innocent completely shatter. In this game, Amanda is showing us her memories with Sam and a mystery friend. Through the form of an Wooly is seen constantly interjecting and interposing on these memories, trying to make it seem as if this is a memory shared between the duo. This erratic behavior gets progressively worse until the very last tape of the game, in which we have to set up a birthday party, aka put candles in a specific position for a ritual. In this tape, Wooly starts ranting and ranting until he starts glitching out and literally disappears into a cloud of wool. Here's where stuff gets juicy. After Rebecca created the entity, which was named the Colton Anomaly, they needed something bigger to contain her. So alongside creating Wooly from Marcus, they created Shepard. This is a monstrous version of Wooly in which we get a glimpse of in the second game, but we get a closer view by the end of the third. Now this is basically Marcus now, since his body has long passed away and practically only exists within the tapes. This is where, in my opinion at least, where his motives change. No matter what ending you get in the third game, we find Rebecca in a stasis pod. and we see a showdown between the Colton and Shepard. Don't worry, I'll go into more detail later. Anyways, Shepard is clearly in the fight trying to keep the last tape from being destroyed, as that is basically the last thing to keeping him alive. Now, you remember when I said Hamel needed more children? Well, here's where we get introduced to Silly, slightly annoying and adorable possum named Chicken Scratch in the third game, but is introduced in the second game. This little menace is initially shown to foil Amanda and Woolie's plans, almost like a Swiper the Fox from Dora the Explorer. However, in the third game, he basically replaces Woolie as Amanda's companion, and even helps lead the player in the right direction for a puzzle. Ever since his first appearance, people were trying to figure out who was this random opossum showing up and bothering Amanda, all until the full release of Otta 2, you see. We travel to the Kensdale Public Library with a mysterious masked figure who we don't get their identity until the end of the game, but spoiler, her name is Joanne. During a specific tape towards the latter half of the game, we are met with Amanda and Woolie in a dim alleyway until our possum friend shows up to mess with them. As we get a message from the masked stranger over a walkie-talkie, the possum seems to react to this voice and tries to say a name, the name Joanne, before he gets thrown into a dumpster. If this name isn't familiar to you, that's okay. Joanne is a young woman who wrote a letter to Kate asking for help on finding her younger brother, Jordan, which we read in the first game. Remember this name for later. Also, if it seems as if I'm jumping between games and getting complicated, I apologize. I'm trying my best. It'll all make sense by the end, trust me. Anyways, in a TA3, we find more tapes that include the possum, who is now named Chicken Scratch by Amanda Decision. During 2 tapes in particular, we finally get concrete evidence on who this truly is. The first is a tape in which Amanda and Woolie are teaching about the food groups. The possum, a now honorary member of the cast, pops up during introduction and quite literally says "and Jordan," even if it's in his jumbled voice. Now, with the confirmation that this is Jordan, we go to the second tape I mentioned, in which we are doing a scavenger hunt with our cast of characters. Jordan points out specific items corresponding to stasis pods in the room nearby, which have matching symbols. And y'all, I swear I will explain the stasis pods, just give me a moment. Anywho, after finding the last 2 symbols and we return to the tape, we hear a crash and the security system starts blaring. Jordan seems to start panicking, but we don't have time to focus on that, as Shepard breaks into the nearby room and destroys the stasis pods. This is unfortunately the end of our friend Jordan and all the bouncing objects in the background. All those pods? Yay, they all held children, and Jordan was one of them. When we hear shattering sounds, the TV we were watching the tape on cuts to static, and we see hands banging on the glass before slowly sliding down, signifying Jordan's death. Finally we discuss the stasis pods. You see, Hamel needed some way to store the bodies of these children after transferring their conscience into the show. So they placed them in stasis pods to keep their bodies in well enough condition so that they technically wouldn't die while stuck in a TA. This is also what held Rebecca and Marcus. But in-game, it's safe to assume that Rebecca is the only one to actually survive from the show, and even she is in grim condition. So it seems as if Hamlin wasn't fully thinking through their plan. Each location per game does have lore significance. You just may not see it until the end once the story wraps up. Of course, the first game starts in Kate Park's house inherited by Riley, more specifically the attic where the tapes are hidden. In the second, we go to the Kensdale Public Library, where multiple key points in Sam and Rebecca's story, most prevalently where Sam makes the deal with Hamlin. Lastly, in the third game, we are in Hamlin Productions itself, which initially just looks like a plain office building, but then we find the room holding Rebecca's stasis pod and the room holding the children. Go a little deeper though, and you end up in a ritual room in a cathedral. Yay, it's clear that the third game is the most densely packed of the trio. I could honestly make a full separate video on that game alone, but anyways. This may not be the most in-depth story analysis, but I will link down below in the description an actual full analysis, even going further into the history of Hameln and how the cult works. This is my first analysis, so excuse me if it's a little bleak, but what I will give you is my full opinion on each of the games and story points. In my opinion, Auto 1 is the worst in the franchise. Not that it is a bad game on its own, since it is the introduction of the franchise. You're not going to get the full story given to you naturally. So compared to the second and third parts, it's my number 3. Aspects I personally love was the puzzles. I'm all for a good puzzle in a video game, and even though puzzles are in all 3, I actually prefer some of them to some of the latter ones. I think one of the most iconic ones, aka Lee in the kitchen, tape is one of the most enjoyable alongside In Your Neighborhood. For in the kitchen, Amanda and Wooly are making an apple pie. And naturally we get asked what our favorite pie is. Most would just type in a random pie flavor. But if you decide to put in the word mutton, another term for a lamb or sheep, Amanda will look over to Wooly with hunger and will say, "That sounds delicious." It's very subtle in the scare factor, but overall it is still unsettling on first viewing. Anyways, you get instructions on how to make an apple pie, but these instructions would never work for a real pie. That's where the puzzle comes in. When you turn around, a big toy oven will be on the table right behind you with a plastic pie tin and plastic fruits. Now, if you follow the directions exactly, you'll just get the next tape. But if you follow what Wooly says in the tape, with his favorite pie being peach, and make a peach pie instead, you get a secret tape. We all love secret tapes, right? For the In Your Neighborhood cape, Amanda and Wooly want to get Amanda's friend a thank you gift for helping cheer her up. The clue for this secret is a bit more subtle, with it being letters on the banner in the card store spelling facade. In the attic you're in, there is a toy piano, and if you spell the word with the keys, you get an altered version of the same tape, which will help with another puzzle later. The reason why I enjoy this puzzle is because you would have to be paying close attention to find it. This clue could easily be passed over if you're not looking at the banner directly. Something that I dislike, however, is all of the endings in the game. No, I'm not saying having multiple endings is a bad thing by any means. What I am saying is that since only one ending is canonical, what do the others mean? Like, okay, the rest of the games technically have multiple, but it's just dying in specific parts, with 2 official endings and 1 being canonical, and I think that works. However, in the first game, there is 5 endings, and until the release of the second game, nobody knew what was the real ending. I mean, we literally get sucked into the TV and get turned into a piece of cartoon meat in the butcher shop. Please explain what was that? For a TA2, I think this is my favorite out of all 3. For a very specific reason though. It's stationary, all taking place in one main area, while rarely having to branch out into other areas of the library. Also, for the lore that is provided in this game, it's just enough to make your jaw drop, but not too much to be overwhelming once you're done playing the game. My favorite tapes are Good Night, and When You're Feeling Bad. In the tape Good Night, we're helping Amanda get ready for bed, and we have to complete the usual routine of someone heading to sleep. Pick up toys, brushing your teeth, and putting on pajamas. Simple and cute. While we're in the bathroom, we get a surprise visit from Possum Buddy Jordan, but the real important part happens after Amanda puts on her pajamas. She asks us what we're afraid of. A quick secret to do is type in her name, but she just laugh before it continues to normal. But once she lays down, she asks us whether or not she should be a big girl and don't use a nightlight or use a nightlight. If you choose to get her a nightlight, all the lights will cut out in the library, and you have to run and get her nightlight before bringing it back to the TV. When this is given, she thanks us before saying goodnight, Riley. If you don't remember, the player is Riley, so that means Amanda. Yeah, Rebecca knows us. If you choose to not give her the nightlight, however, she'll try to fall asleep, but will be haunted by a nightmare of the operation that forced her into this show. She wake with a scream before the tape ends. Now for when you're feeling bad. I've already explained what happens in the tape, so this will be why I enjoyed this tape. Like I said, on the surface, this just looks like Amanda just doesn't like Wooly, so we shouldn't listen to him. But no, what is actually happening is that the story Wooly tells us is a fantasized version of what happened between Sam and Rebecca and what they told Rebecca to keep her docile. Amanda doesn't believe him because that's not how she saw it. So following her version is telling us how she actually felt about the situation. Something that I dislike, however, is the tape lets learn patience. The tape itself is okay. What I dislike is the puzzle attached to it. Now, I admit this reason may sound a little dramatic, but again, this is my opinion. There are two versions of this tape, but I will just be talking about the normal version and not the corrupted. So in this tape, Wooly is back and Amanda and him are trying to build a birdhouse. During certain events, like interacting with something in the real world, will make them make the faces of see no evil. Speak no evil, hear no evil. Sounds cool, right? Well, to coincide with these faces, there are big monkeys next to the corresponding part. When you complete the tape and turn around, all three of these monkeys will stand up on each other shoulders to present you the next tape. They make the loudest chorus of screams and monkey noises. I just can't do it. It's the only real jump scare to me, and I hate it. Obviously, at a 3H, it's in the middle for my ranking. I do enjoy this game for all of the lore it gives us, but it is kind of overwhelming once you finish the story. And let's not forget that you basically get 3 games in one. While it does look cool and shows all the layers of Hamlin's evil, god dang, is it not a little disorienting at times? You go from an office-style break room to a laboratory to a cathedral. That is 3 completely different types of environments, and it's too much for me personally. Something that I love about the game are what I call memory tapes. These are tapes you get after you listen to Amanda describing a memory and match the event. I don't know. I think it's the fact that we're basically seeing Rebecca fully through Amanda, and we see joyful times she had before all what happened to her happened. My favorite of these memory tapes is Beach. Amanda describes a little girl going with her father and her best friend to the beach. The little girls get matching bathing suits and sunglasses, share a smoothie, and see a crab. It's so simple, but it feels whimsical almost because this is one of Rebecca's memories, truly untainted by Hamlin's influence. And speaking of the best friend, I love the theory that this was Riley when she was a little girl. And from what I can tell, this is confirmed. In the second game, Amanda addresses Riley by name, and when we rescue Rebecca from the stasis pod, she seems to know us. Or at least enough to where she doesn't immediately freak out when we free her. I've already said mostly what I disliked, but something besides. The environments to me is how you get the secret tapes. Now I understand you gotta up the difficulty as the game progresses, but some of the puzzles to get secret tapes is insane. The clearest example to me is when we get to the puzzle about the food groups. Normally, you'd follow a picture on the wall that shows what foods these toy rats will eat. For a visual, just imagine a rat version of Hungry Hippos. That's the best way I can describe it. Anyways, if you go outside of the break room, you'll see a paper on the bulletin board that has all the kids who are in stasis pods on it, and what was used as a behavioral treat. I know I said I like puzzles where you gotta be paying close attention to get the clues, but there's not even an indicator for this clue. So you find the snacks that match up with the pod number, then go into the stasis pod room and place the corresponding snacks in front of the corresponding pods until a note appears in your hand. And when you head back to the fridge, there will be a secret tape inside. Obviously, this is a doable puzzle. It wouldn't be in the game if you couldn't actually solve it. My issue is if you're just a casual player of a TA, not necessarily going for the tapes, You expect them to just thinks that this food is for something extra in the puzzle. With no clue indication. Just ridiculous. On to the theories and my personal questions for the games. Of course, most of these theories are debunked as the series concluded, but there are a couple that I still love the idea of even if they are wrong. Number 1, the whole theory of Wooly being Sam, honestly. This theory could have worked all up until the third game. No father would treat their trapped child like how Wooly is with Amanda. Plus, you can't put it past Hamill to torture Sam even more. So forcing him into this digital realm isn't that far-fetched. Number 2, the theory that Riley was the little girl Amanda spoke about in her memory tapes. Now, I'm pretty sure this is canon, but still, I just love that we're playing this character whose mission is to save an old childhood friend, even if we don't know it yet. I'd honestly want to see how does Rebecca react to the real world after being in a stasis pod and hooked up into a digital world. And how did she survive this long? Like, clearly she isn't in pristine condition, but still, she got out that pod like somebody who just took a really long nap. Anybody who knows a bit more into the science of this, please tell me in the comments because I'm genuinely curious. As far as questions go, I have quite a few that will honestly make you feel like, huh, but I will explain. Question 1, who is giving us, filming these tapes for us? Like, I understand these puzzles give you tapes because that's a game mechanic, but if we are introduced to the supernatural and science, why can't this be answered? Is the Colton anomaly giving them to us? Is it some mysterious character we've never heard of? We know that Kate gave us some tapes in a TA1, but how do the puzzle objects appear behind US and how the tapes get in there? I don't care about game mechanics no more. I need answers immediately.
We want answers.
Anyways, for the second half of my question, who is filming all these secret tapes for us? Like, some are actual footage from security cameras, some are filmed by Sam, and the rest are unknown. Next question, why does Wooly switch up so much during the last 2 games? Like, we obviously know who Wooly is, but like, why was he getting so possessive of her during the 3rd game? His whole purpose is to keep her subdued enough so she wouldn't try to escape. But he's going into the territory of being possessive over her. Mind you, this is a grown, dead man getting mad because Rebecca don't want to be his friend. Be so for real. What did Hamlin do to Marcus to give him that mindset? Anyways, thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed my thought and opinions on the series. Again, I am not a full theorizer. I am just a teen who likes horror games and lore. I will link some explanation videos on the full storyline and connections. Also, let me know down below what games or shows would you like me to talk about. I have a few in mind already, but I want to hear your suggestions. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, babes.